Somewhere in America tonight, a mother is setting the table for 4 and cooking for 3. She stopped asking the question out loud about a year ago. Are you coming home this weekend? She knows the answer now, so the question just lives in her chest, where nobody has to hear it. Her phone sits face down on the counter while she cooks, because she has learned something that took years to learn. Checking it does not make the message come. She still prays for her son every single day. She has prayed for him for 6 years. She knows a couple at church who have prayed for their daughter for 19. If you know that prayer, if there is a chair like that chair at your table, this video was made for you. It was not made to hand you a formula, and it will not promise you a date, because nobody on this earth can promise you a date. What it will give you is 5 things Scripture actually says to parents like you. Real things. Tested things. The kind that hold weight at 2 in the morning. And here is what you should know before we start. At least 2 of them are probably not what you have been told at church. One of them might even sound wrong the first time you hear it. So leave the dishes for a minute. Sit down at that table, next to that chair. We are going to talk about the person who used to sit in it. Stay in that kitchen for a minute, because every detail in this room has a story attached to it. On the refrigerator, there is a photograph held up by a magnet from a vacation nobody remembers clearly anymore. The whole family is in it. Everyone is squinting into the sun somewhere in the Smoky Mountains. And the boy in the middle is maybe 17. And he has his arm around his mother. And he is laughing at something his father said 2 seconds before the shutter clicked. That photo is 8 years old. It is the last picture where all of them are in the same frame. She has thought about taking it down. She never will. Down the hall, there is a bedroom that gets vacuumed once a month and used never. In the garage, there is a baseball glove on a shelf, oiled once a year by a father who would have a hard time explaining why he still does that. And on Monday morning, at work, someone in the break room will ask the question people ask, "How are the kids?" And she will give the answer she has sanded smooth over 5 years of practice. "Oh, they're doing their thing. Emily's in Charlotte. She loves it. Tyler's out in Denver." That is all true. It is also a locked door with a welcome mat in front of it. Because here is what she does not say in the break room. Tyler is 29 years old. He has a good job, an apartment, a girlfriend they have met twice. He calls on Christmas and on her birthday, and the calls are pleasant, and they are about nothing. Weather, the playoffs, the dog. There is exactly one subject that ends the call within 90 seconds, and it is the subject that used to be the center of their family's life. The faith he was raised in, the faith he walked away from at 22. Calmly, like a man setting down a bag he was tired of carrying. Maybe your version is different. Maybe your daughter still believes something. She just will not come near a church because of what happened at the last one. Maybe your son did not walk away calmly at all. Maybe there was a fight, an ugly one, words on both sides that nobody has cleaned up. And now it has been 3 years of silence, so complete that you learn about his life from his cousin's Instagram. Maybe your child is living in a way that scares you, and you lie awake doing the math on how fast a life like that burns. The details are different in every house. The chair is the same, and here is the part almost nobody says out loud. So let it be said right now. This might be the loneliest kind of grief in America, because it is grief without a funeral. When someone dies, the church shows up. Casserole, cards, people who sit with you. When your adult child leaves the faith, or leaves the family, nobody shows up, because nothing officially happened. There is no service for this. There is no card at the store for this. There is just you, smiling in a hallway on Sunday morning while another family's kid gets prayed over before leaving for a mission trip. And you, standing there, loving that family and aching at the same time, and hating yourself a little for the aching. You have prayed about it so many times, the words have grooves in them. So, this video is not going to ask whether you have prayed enough. You have. It is not going to hand you 3 easy steps, because you are not new at this, and you would see through easy in a second. The word still is sitting right there in the title for a reason. Still praying, which means the real question in your house was never, how do I pray? You know how to pray. The real question is harder and deeper and almost never preached on. How do you keep loving, keep praying, and keep living through the years when nothing seems to change? That question has an answer. It comes in 5 pieces, and finding them will take us through a story Jesus told about a boy and his father, through a phone call at 2 in the morning, and through one night in a kitchen just like this one. It will also take us 1600 years into the past, to a widow in North Africa who stood exactly where you are standing. She prayed for one wandering child through years that stretched past a decade. And the reason we know her story down to the smallest detail, the reason we know what she said, where she wept, and what she asked God for on her worst night, is something almost too strange to believe. The child wrote it all down, every tear she cried over him, recorded by the very person she was crying over. From the other side of the story, we will meet her soon. First, we need to watch a young man ask his father for money. The story comes from Luke, chapter 15, and Jesus told it to a crowd, and you have probably heard it 100 times. Hear it again anyway, slowly, because the first scene is worse than you remember. A man had 2 sons. One morning, the younger one comes to his father, and he has clearly rehearsed this. And he says, "Father, give me my share of the estate." Freeze that sentence and feel what it actually weighs. Because in that world, everyone listening to Jesus felt it instantly. An inheritance comes when a father dies. That is the whole idea of an inheritance. To ask for it early, while the man is standing in front of you, healthy, running the farm, is to say something no polite translation can soften. I want what I get when you die. I am tired of waiting for you to die. The sons of that culture did not talk to fathers this way. This is a small village world where honor is the family's whole currency, where everyone knows everyone. And by sundown, every household in that village will know what this boy said to his father over breakfast. The father has every right to refuse. Honestly, he has every right to do far more than refuse. The crowd listening to Jesus would have expected the father in the story to answer this insult with a raised hand or a raised voice. And not one person would have blamed him. Here is what the father does instead. Luke gives it to us in 5 quiet words. So he divided his property between them. He splits the estate. Land his own father worked. Flocks with his family's history in them, converted into money a young man can carry. And then comes the detail that this whole chapter exists for. The detail that is easy to read right past. The father lets him leave. Read the story again if you want. It is not there. There is no scene where the father blocks the doorway. No scene where he follows the boy down the road, pleading, bargaining, offering him a bigger room and a later curfew if he will just stay. No scene where he hires a man from the village to trail his son into the far country and send back reports. The boy packs everything he has, walks out of the house, and the father stands there and watches the road take him. And you have to sit with who is telling this story. This is Jesus, describing what God's love is like. He could have built the father in this parable any way he wanted. He built a father who lets his son go. Stay right here, because this is where the first truth of this video lands. And it lands hard. You were given the responsibility to love your child. You were never given the power to control your child's heart. Those are two different jobs, and only one of them was ever yours. Somewhere along the way, most Christian parents quietly merge them into one. We think that if we love well enough, train well enough, pray hard enough, model it faithfully enough, we can produce a specific result inside another human soul. And then the result does not come. And we conclude the love must have been defective. Look at the parable again. Was the father's love defective? He is the picture of God in this story. His love is the standard. And his boy looked that love in the face and chose the far country anyway. If you need the point made even sharper, raise your eyes from the parable to the whole Bible. God is the perfect father. No wounds in his parenting. No blind spots. No bad years. He placed his children in a garden he built for them, walked with them himself, and they still reached for the one thing he asked them not to take. From Eden forward, Scripture is one long story of a flawless father and wandering children. Perfect love, offered to a free heart. You can still hear the word no. So if perfect love could not force a yes, your love was never going to be able to either. That was never a flaw in you. That is what love costs when it is offered to a real person instead of a puppet. A heart that cannot walk away is a heart that cannot truly come to you. And from the very beginning, God has treated his children as free souls, able to stay or to go. Because love that is not chosen is not love at all. Your child's leaving is not the verdict on your love. It is the terrible evidence that you raised a free human being, which is the only kind worth raising. Now watch the father in the story one more time. Because his hardest hour is not the goodbye. The money is counted out. The bags are packed. The road swallows the boy a little at a time, the way roads do, until there is just heat, shimmer, and dust where a sun used to be, and the father turns around and walks back through his own gate and goes into his house. And now he has to do the thing you know everything about. He has to live there, in a house with one voice missing from it. He has to eat dinner across from an empty place, and answer the neighbor's careful questions, and get up the next morning and run a farm, carrying a son in his chest the whole time. The story is going to leave him there for a while. So are we. Because before we follow that boy into the far country, we need to talk about what happens to a parent in that house at 3 o'clock in the morning. When the question comes, you know the question. It never comes during the day. During the day there is work, and traffic, and groceries, and the mind stays busy enough to keep the door shut. The question waits until 3 in the morning, when the house is quiet and the defenses are asleep, and then it lets itself in and sits down on the edge of the bed. Was it something I did? And the mind, which should be resting, starts up the projector instead. You know the reel by heart because you have watched it 1,000 times. The travel job You took the year he was in 7th grade. All those Tuesdays you were in another city. The divorce, if there was one, and the look on his face at the kitchen table when you told him, the church you chose, the one with the youth pastor who turned out to be a fraud. And your kid watched the whole thing come apart from the 3rd row. The argument when he was 19, the one where you said the sentence you would trade 10 years of your life to unsay. You remember the exact words. You remember what the light was like in the room when you said them. The projector runs all night if you let it. And it only plays one genre. Evidence for the prosecution. Now, here is where most Christian videos rush in with a warm blanket. They say, "Stop that. You did nothing wrong. You were a good parent. Do not blame yourself." And it sounds kind, but you are too honest for that blanket. And somewhere in your gut, it has never actually warmed you. And here is why. You know it might not be true. You were there. You know the whole record. The parts nobody else saw. Maybe there were years you were distracted, or harsh, or absent, or so busy defending the rules that you forgot to know the kid. Real parents have real regrets. And a video that pats your hand and says none of it mattered is a video that has decided to lie to you for your comfort. This one will not. So let us say the harder, truer thing instead, and let us say it carefully, because everything depends on getting this line right. There may be things you genuinely wish you had done differently. Some of them may have wounded your child. If that is true, it deserves to be taken seriously, brought to God honestly, and, when the door ever opens, owned to your child plainly. That is called repentance, and no parent is above it. And later in this video, we will talk about what a real apology to an adult child sounds like. But repenting of your real mistakes is one thing. Carrying the responsibility for every choice a grown adult makes with a free will is something else entirely. God asks for the first. God has never once asked for the second. The prosecutor at 3 in the morning wants to fuse those together. He wants you to believe that if you can just find the flaw, the year, the sentence, the missed Tuesday, then you will have the explanation. And the explanation will be you. And notice the strange bargain hiding underneath that. Because there is one. If it was all your fault, then somewhere in the guilt is a whisper of control. It says, "You broke this," which means the fixing runs through you. Which means if you just become sorry enough, the story bends. It does not bend that way. It never did. Your child is not a math problem where you were the error. Your child is a soul with a will, standing before God on his own 2 feet, making choices you did not make for him. Your worst parenting moment did not remove his freedom. And this is the part the prosecutor never mentions. Your best parenting moment could not have removed it either. Whole generations of faithful parents have had to learn this. And you are not the first to lie awake running the reel. Not by 16 centuries. In the year 371, in a small town in Roman North Africa called Thagaste, a widow lay awake with a reel of her own. Her husband had died the year before. Her son was 17. Brilliant, restless, the kind of boy teachers fight over, and she had prayed for him since before he could walk. She had raised him toward Christ the way a farmer trellises a vine, patiently, daily, on purpose. And that year the boy left for the big city, for Carthage, to study. And the reports that came back would have put any Christian mother of any century on the floor. He had taken a mistress. He was running with a crowd that called themselves the Wreckers, young men who thought cruelty was a sport. And worst of all, worse to her than all the rest of it combined, he had joined a religious sect that she considered flat heresy, a group that mocked the scriptures she had taught him and called her faith a religion for simple minds. Her boy did not just drift from what she believed. He got educated against it, and he came home able to argue circles around her. And he enjoyed doing it. Her name was Monica, and the road in front of her was long, in a way she mercifully could not see yet. Christian tradition remembers what came next as 17 years of prayer, and her son's own account bears the number out. 17 years. For one child. Here is the astonishing thing. The reason we can tell her story at all. We know what those years cost her. We know where she wept and what she asked God for and which nights broke her. In detail, down to the color of the moments. And we know it because years later, someone sat down and wrote the whole thing out. Every tear. From memory, the person she was crying over, the son himself, telling his mother's story from inside it, from the far country. Looking back, hold on to her. She is going to walk with us for the rest of this video, and her worst night is still ahead of us. And so is the strangest answer to prayer in Christian history. But first, we have to deal with a Sunday morning, because the prosecutor at 3 in the morning is not the only voice telling you this is all your fault. Some of the other voices go to your church, and some of them carry a Bible verse when they come. It happens in the hallway, after service, next to the coffee, someone from your small group, someone who genuinely cares about you, asks how your son is doing, and because you are tired of the sanded, smooth answer, you tell a little of the truth. He is still pretty far from the Lord. We have not talked much this year. And the person nods, with real sympathy on their face, and then says the thing, well, you know what the word says. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And they let it hang there. They mean it as encouragement. Most of them keep the faith. It will come around, but that is not how it lands. And both of you can feel how it lands, because if that verse is a guarantee, then it only bends one direction. If training the child rightly produces a child who stays, and your child left, the verse has quietly handed down its ruling. The training was the problem. The trainer was the problem. It is a conviction delivered in a pastel tone, with a hand on your shoulder. Some of you have carried that verse like a stone in your shoe for years. So let us stop right now and actually read the thing. Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 6, sits in a book called Proverbs, and that name is not decoration. It tells you what kind of writing you are holding. A proverb is a compressed piece of wisdom about how life generally works. It is not a contract with your child's name notarized on it. And the Bible itself makes this impossible to miss, because the same book works the same way on other subjects. Proverbs says, "The hand of the diligent makes rich." It is generally true. Hard work usually beats laziness, and every one of us knows a diligent man who got laid off at 57 and worked like a mule his whole life and never got rich. When that happened, nobody stood in a church hallway and told him the verse proves he was secretly lazy. We all understood. It is a proverb. It describes the way of wisdom, and it leaves room for a fallen world. Because the book of Proverbs sits 3 books away from Job, whose entire story exists to prove that suffering is not always somebody's fault. Somehow, we extend that understanding to money, to health, to business. And then we get to the verse about children, the one place where the stakes are our own flesh and blood. And we turn a proverb into a warranty. Raise them right, and the outcome is guaranteed. Which means every wandering child is a manufacturing defect, traceable to the factory. Do you see what that reading actually accuses God of? Follow it all the way. If perfectly training a child guarantees the child stays, then explain Israel. God himself trained that nation. He did not delegate it. He taught them with his own voice from a mountain, fed them with his own hand in a desert, disciplined them, forgave them, carried them, wrote his instruction on their doorposts and their hearts. In Isaiah, he says it in the tone of a heartbroken parent. I reared children and brought them up, and they have rebelled against me. By the warranty reading of Proverbs 22, God is a failed father. The logic allows no other verdict. And explain the flip side too, because your own church proves it every Sunday. Somewhere in your congregation is a rock-solid believer who grew up in chaos. Addict parents. No Bible in the house. Nobody training anybody in anything. And there they are, 40 years old, loving Jesus with their whole chest. According to the warranty, that person is impossible. Wrong inputs, wrong output, yet there they sit, living proof that grace does not run on our assembly line, in either direction. God buried the final word on this in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 18, and it is worth hearing in full strength, because he says it like a judge closing a case. The one who sins is the one who will die. The child will not share the guilt of the parent, nor will the parent share the guilt of the child. Each soul answers for its own walk. Your father's failures were never your sentence. And read it again, slowly, because the same sentence swings both ways. Your child's choices are not your sentence either. So here is what you can do with Proverbs 22:6. And it is better than a warranty. You can read it as what it is. Wisdom that is true in general and worth building a home on. Faithful training matters enormously. It shapes, it plans, it stacks the deck toward life. Nothing in this chapter says your years of bedtime prayers and Sunday mornings were wasted. They were seed, and seed is real. And later in this video, you will see exactly what buried seed can do decades after everyone assumed it was dead. But a proverb tells you which way wisdom leans. It does not chain God to a formula, and it does not chain your child's freedom to your performance. And it was never meant to be handed to a grieving mother in a hallway as a verdict. So the next time that verse comes at you, whether from a well-meaning friend or from the prosecutor at 3 a.m, you are allowed to answer it. The answer is one sentence. That verse describes the way of wisdom. And I walked it, and my child is a free soul in the hands of a faithful God. And the case against me is closed. If the accusing voices have gone quiet, even a little, something important becomes possible. For years, the guilt has kept the spotlight fixed on you. Your mistakes, your record, your fault. But your child did not leave because of a verse, and probably did not leave to spite you. And as long as the spotlight stays on you, you will never actually see him. So let us do something brave. Let us turn the spotlight around. Walk out of your kitchen and go find out what it actually looks like inside the far country. The real one, from the inside. Because until you understand why they leave, you cannot understand what you are actually praying for. Leave the kitchen now. Leave the whole house. The photo on the refrigerator. The room that gets vacuumed and never used. Drive 900 miles to a city your child chose, to an apartment you have never seen. It is a Friday night. The apartment is nice. 3rd floor. Good light. Plants somebody remembers to water. There was a dinner here tonight. 6 friends. Real laughter. The kind of evening that photographs like happiness. And now the friends have gone home. And the dishes are stacked. And your child, 31 years old, is standing alone in a quiet kitchen of their own. There is a moment. Right there. After the door closes and before the television goes on, a little pocket of silence. Nobody on earth sees it. You have imagined this apartment 1,000 ways. And you have never once imagined this. The 10 seconds where your grown child stands in a kitchen holding a dish towel, feeling something they would not be able to name if you asked. We are not going to tell you what that feeling is. That would be a lie dressed up as comfort. And we do not do that here. Maybe it is nothing. Maybe it is an ache. What matters is that the moment exists at all, because it proves something a praying parent forgets on the hard nights. There is an entire life happening out there, beyond the edge of everything you can see. Your knowledge of your child stops at the border. God's does not. Hold that thought. We are coming back for it. But first, the braver question, the one this chapter exists for. Why do they leave? Ask it honestly. Because the church usually does not. From a safe distance, every departure gets filed under one word: rébellion. He wanted to sin. So he found a story that let him, and the word is convenient, because it requires nothing from us. No listening, no self-examination, just a shake of the head. But get close to the actual stories, the real ones sitting in the empty chairs of America. And that single word starts falling apart in your hands. People leave through different doors. It is worth walking past a few of them. Some leave through the door of the wound. They did not walk away from Jesus. They walked away from something that happened in a building with his name on it. The pastor who turned out to be living a double life while your kid was memorizing verses in his youth group. The church split. The one where your child watched deacons who taught him about love file lawsuits against each other. The small group that dissected some struggling family's business as a prayer request. Your child saw the machinery up close. At an age when the machinery and the faith looked like the same thing. And when they threw one out, the other went with it. Ask people in their 30s why they left. And before long, you will stop hearing arguments and start hearing scenes. Something they watched. Something done to them, or near them, by people holding Bibles. Some leave through the door of the question. This one is hard for faithful parents to hear. So hear it anyway. Somewhere around 15 or 19 or 22, your child had a real question. About suffering. Maybe about science. About hell. About the parts of Scripture that are genuinely hard. And they brought that question to the people in charge of answers. And the people in charge got nervous. They were told, "We do not ask that here." Told, "Just have faith." Told, "Watch out. That is the devil talking." Nobody sat with them in the question. So they concluded, reasonably, that the house had no room for their mind. And a person will not stay long in a house with no room for their mind. They did not leave because they stopped thinking. Some of them left because they started, and no one would think alongside them. Some leave through the slowest door of all. The borrowed coat, This child never fought anybody. This child went to every service, sang every song, prayed at every dinner, and was wearing, the entire time, a faith that belonged to their parents. It fit fine, for years, the way a borrowed coat fits fine until the weather turns. Then came college, or grief, or just distance, and one ordinary day they realized the coat was never theirs. For some, there was not even a moment of realizing. The faith simply faded the way a radio station fades on a long drive, quieter every year, until one day the car was silent and they could not have told you which mile lost the signal. There was no crisis. Nothing happened. That is the eeriest part for the parents. Nothing happened. The faith was simply never transferred, only worn. And when they set it down, they did not feel like they were losing God. They felt like they were finally being honest. Some of the most painful phone calls in America start with a grown child saying, "I never really believed it. I was doing it for you." And yes, some leave through the door the church always talks about, the appetite, the wanting, a life with no referee, money and freedom and pleasure, with nobody's disappointed face at the end of it. The boy in Luke 15 went through that door at a full run. It is a real door. It has just never been the only one. And if you have spent years assuming it was your child's door, this may be the moment to hold that assumption up to the light and honestly ask whether you ever checked, is there something underneath all four doors? Scripture would say yes. Underneath every version, there is a soul doing what souls have done since Eden, stepping out from under the Father's roof to find out who they are without Him. But knowing the root does not excuse you from knowing your child. The doors matter. You pray differently for a wounded person than for a hungry one. You speak differently to a doubter than to a runaway. Half the collisions between praying parents and prodigal children happen because the parent is addressing a rebel while the child is nursing a wound. And neither one ever finds out what the other is actually carrying. There is one more thing worth knowing about the far country. And for this, we have a witness. The best one in history. Remember Monica's son, the brilliant boy who left for Carthage and took a mistress and joined the sect and learned to argue his mother into a corner. Years later, when he wrote it all down, he described his years in the far country from the inside. And one line of it has survived 16 centuries because it names the thing so perfectly. Describing himself at 19 in the big city, he wrote, "I was not yet in love, but I was in love with love itself. In love with love, reaching for every warm thing, hoping it was the warm thing." And here is his report from the far side. The intelligence no parent can gather from a kitchen 900 miles away. He had everything the far country sells. The career caught fire. The crowd applauded. The bed was not empty, and threaded through all of it, by his own account, ran a hunger that none of it touched, a restlessness he could not argue away. Though he was the best arguer anyone knew, he was carrying an emptiness through a life that looked, from the outside, completely full. His mother could not see that hunger. From where she stood, she could only see the mistress and the heresy and the distance, the outside of the life, the inside, the ache, the hollow place her prayers were actually aimed at, was hidden from her the whole time. It was not hidden from God. Which brings us to the border. Your sight ends at the edge of what your child lets you see. And these days, that edge might be a Christmas call about the weather. Standing at that border is where the panic lives. But standing at that same border is where the second truth of this video is waiting. And it is the one this whole video is named for. If your child has gone beyond your reach, you need to know how far God's reach goes. There is a psalm that answers that exact question. It was written by a man trying his hardest to find the end of God's reach, hunting for it, naming every hiding place he could think of. It may be the most comforting search ever to come up empty. Psalm 139 was written by David, and the middle of it reads like a man testing the walls of his own existence, looking for the exit. Listen to him work. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? He is not asking rhetorically. He runs the experiment, hiding place by hiding place. And he starts at the ceiling of the universe. If I go up to the heavens, you are there. All right. Then the floor. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. The Hebrew word there is Sheol, the land of the dead, the deepest down a human mind could reach. And David says, I checked. You are already there. Then he tries distance instead of depth. And this is the verse to underline, because it was written for the parent watching this video. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, feel that phrase, the far side of the sea. For a man in ancient Israel, the sea was the west, the horizon, the direction where the known world stopped. David is naming the farthest away a person could possibly be, the address you do not have, the city you have never visited, the far country itself. If I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast, even there. 2 words, and they are the whole gospel for a praying parent. David went looking for 1 square foot of creation where God's hand does not operate. And he came back and reported, there is no such place. The map has no edges. He never found the border because the border does not exist. Now bring that home, carefully, because it has to be said with precision or it turns into something Scripture never promised. Here is what is true in your house tonight. You do not know where your child goes on Friday nights. You do not know what they believe anymore. Not really. Not the honest version. You do not know if they ever think about God. Whether any of the seed is alive under the snow. Whether your name crossing their phone screen makes them feel warmth or weight. Your reach, your actual reach, has shrunk to a text message they may not answer, and a call on Christmas about the weather. That is the truth. And it is a hard one. Here is what else is true. Every one of those unknowns is a limit on you. Not one of them is a limit on God. Your child wakes up every morning inside Psalm 139. Whether they believe a word of it or not. They ride to work, with even there running under the wheels. God does not lose the thread of a story because the parents stopped getting chapters. There is no far side of the sea to him. The apartment you have never seen. He was there before the furniture. The friends you have never met. He knows their names and their stories. And which one of them, someday, might say the sentence that cracks a door open. Now, hold on. Because right here is where this video refuses to cross a line. And you need to see the line to trust everything else we say. We are not telling you that God is secretly working on your child right now, softening their heart at this very moment, arranging events behind the curtain toward a homecoming. You have heard that in other videos. It feels wonderful, and nobody who says it can know it. Because Scripture does not promise it about your specific child on your specific timeline. And a comfort built on a guess will collapse exactly when you need it most. on the hard night. This video only builds with load-bearing material. So here is the load-bearing claim. The second truth. And it holds weight precisely because it claims no more than God actually said. Your child can be beyond your reach without being beyond God's reach. Your inability to get through is real. It is just not evidence. The phone calls that go nowhere. The conversations that end in 90 seconds. The years of silence. All of that measures the length of your arm. It measures nothing about His. The reach of God does not run through your access to your child. Thank God for that, because your access is a thread, and His is Psalm 139. 16 centuries ago, a mother in North Africa staked 17 years on exactly that distinction. And there is a scene from those years that you should carry with you, because it might be the single best picture ever recorded of what this truth looks like with skin on. Monica, somewhere in the long middle of it, was desperate on a new front. Her son was deep in the sect by then, fluent in its argument, quick as a whip, and winning every exchange with her. So she did what praying mothers do. She went looking for reinforcements. There was a bishop in the region, an older man, wise. And here is the detail that made him perfect. He had been raised inside that very sect himself before coming to Christ. He knew its arguments from the inside. Monica begged him, "Go talk to my son. Sit with him. Refute him. You, of all people, can untangle this." The bishop said no. He could see what she could not. "Your son is still swollen with the newness of it," he told her, "still in love with the winning. Words right now will bounce off him. Leave him be for a time." The old man said, "Only pray." She would not stop. She kept after him, pressing, weeping, the way you have pressed and wept over your own version of this. And finally, the old bishop, worn down and moved by her tears, said the sentence that Christian parents have been holding on to for 1600 years. "Go your way, and God bless you." It is not possible that the son of these tears should perish. The son of these tears, as if tears were seed, as if the crying itself, the part that felt like weakness, like wasted water at 3 a.m, was actually counting for something, known and kept somewhere. She could not reach her son with a single argument. Heaven, the old man was saying, had other instruments. Monica took that sentence home and carried it like a lamp. And she would need it. Because the sentence was not a schedule. More than a decade of silence from heaven still stood between her and the answer, which is the part of the story nobody preaches, and the part you are living in right now. The years in the middle, the long stretch where you have a promise in one hand and a phone that does not ring in the other, and no way to know how much road is left. Hope has just walked into this video. Now watch what the middle years do to it. There is a special kind of moment that only parents like you know about. And it lasts about 4 seconds. You texted your son 3 days ago. Nothing heavy. You have learned better than heavy. Saw a truck like your old one today. Thought of you. And tonight, while you are half watching television, the phone lights up, and there they are. 3 little dots. He is typing. Right now, this second, 900 miles away. His thumbs are moving, and something is coming, and your whole chest leans toward a piece of glass. Then the dots disappear. No message, just the dots, and then nothing. And you will never know what almost got said. You sit there holding the phone like it might change its mind. It does not. And now you have a fresh mystery to live inside for a week. What did he start to type? Why did he stop? Was it long? Was it angry? Was it? Dear God, was it soft? This is the country you actually live in. Not tragedy exactly, and nothing like peace. You live in silence. And silence is the one thing a human mind cannot leave alone, because silence is a blank screen, and a frightened heart is a projector. Whatever you are most afraid of, that is what you will see on the blank. A car accident nobody has called you about yet. A slide into something darker that no one is close enough to see. Or the quieter fear, the one underneath the others. That there is no drama at all. That he is fine and happy and simply does not think about you very much. Some nights that last one hurts worse than the sirens, so you fill the blank. You study a photo somebody else posted, and he is in the background of it, and you zoom in on his face like an analyst, reading thinness into his cheeks, reading sadness into his eyes, building a whole novel out of 11 blurry pixels. You know you are doing it. You cannot stop doing it. Let this chapter say 2 honest things about that silence, and refuse to say a third. First, silence is not evidence that something terrible is happening. That is the projector talking. People go quiet for 100 ordinary reasons. And busy and distant and avoiding an awkward subject all look identical from 900 miles away. And they are not the same thing at all. Second, and hold this one just as firmly, silence is not secret proof that something wonderful is happening either. There is a sentence, Christians hand each other like a greeting card. God is working behind the scenes. And listen, he may be, but you do not know that. And this video already promised to never comfort you with a guess. What you have is not information about the scenes. What you have is information about the God who is present in them. Even there, whether anything is moving or not, which means you are being asked to learn the single hardest skill of the middle years. Living inside a story you cannot read, without writing the ending yourself. The fearful ending or the fairy tale one. Both are fiction. Both are you, grabbing the pen out of God's hand because the blank page is unbearable. And the questions pile up on that blank page. Do they not? Realones. Practical ones. The ones you have typed into search engines at midnight. Should you text again this week? Or does that push him further? Should you apologize one more time for the thing you already apologized for? Or does the 5th apology start being about you? Should you quit mentioning church entirely? Even quit saying, I am praying for you, because you can feel him flinch through the phone. Those questions deserve real answers, and this video is going to give them, but not yet. And here is why. Answered too fast. They turn into tricks. 3 techniques to reopen contact. You did not raise a lock to be picked. You raised a person. So the questions go on the shelf, in plain sight, and we will take them down near the end, once we have earned them. For now, watch this, mother, because she is doing the only thing left when the screen is blank. It is 11:45 at night. The dishes are done. The house is dark except the light over the stove. And she stands at the counter where the phone is. And she does not pick it up. She closes her eyes instead. And the prayer that comes out is not fancy. It is 4 words. Worn, smooth, like a river stone. The same 4 words as last night and the night before. All the way back for 6 years. God, bring him home. That is the whole prayer. It is an instruction. She is telling God the ending she needs and asking him to type it. Do not judge her for it. Because every parent starts here. and she has nowhere else to stand. Just hold that little prayer in your memory, exactly as it sounds tonight. You are going to hear it twice more before this video is over. And it will not sound like this either time. She goes to bed. The phone stays on the counter, face down, screen dark, and 900 miles away. In a story she cannot read a single page of. Something is finally starting to move. Because the far country has a feature that nobody mentions in the brochure. The far country runs out. Go back to the boy from Luke 15. When we left him, he was a shrinking shape on the road, walking away from his father's house with everything he owned converted into silver, and his whole life in front of him. Jesus covers what happens next with terrifying speed. 2 sentences, and the first one is a party. The younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. You can fill in the montage yourself, and so could everyone listening to Jesus. New city, new friends, and money makes friends fast. The boy who grew up under his father's rules is nobody's son now. He is a name on nobody's list. He is free. For a while, the far country delivers everything on the poster. That part is real. By the way, and parents should admit it, the far country is fun at first. If it were not, nobody would go. Then Luke writes one of the quietest, coldest sentences in the Bible. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. Look at the timing. After he had spent everything, the money is already gone before the famine even arrives. His safety net is already sold. And then the sky stops giving rain, and the economy of the whole region buckles, and food gets scarce for everyone, and the young foreigner with no family, no land, and no silver left discovers what he actually purchased with his inheritance. Nothing that lasted even 3 years. And the friends notice that Jesus does not even bother to narrate their exit. They are simply not in the story anymore. Money made them fast, and the famine unmade them faster. And the boy learns the oldest lesson of the far country, which is that everything there was for sale, including the people, and the bill for all of it comes due at once. So he does the desperate math of the newly poor. He hires himself out to a citizen of that country, a local, a pig farmer, and the crowd listening to Jesus, Jewish men and women raised on the law of Moses, would have made a sound at this point in the story, because pigs were unclean animals, the walking symbol of everything outside the covenant. This boy, this son of a landowner, raised in a house that kept the law, is now living in the mud among the unclean animals, slopping their feed, and it gets one shade darker. He was longing to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. No one gave him anything. In the whole far country, not one door, not one plate, not one hand. That is the bottom. A boy raised in a generous house, standing in a pig pen, envying the animals. Now stop the story. Freeze it right there, on the worst frame, because there is a question this scene raises. And it is the most uncomfortable question in this entire video. And we are not going to flinch. Where is the father? The father is not poor. He has a working estate, servant, herds, and Jesus is the one telling this story. He could have written the father into this scene any way he pleased. A risqui caravan, a letter with silver in it, A servant dispatched to buy the boy out of the pig fields and bring him home clean. Read the parable again, as many times as you like. The father never comes. No caravan, no letter, no silver. Through the party, through the crash, through the famine, through the pig pen, the father of this story stays home. Jesus built his portrait of God's love, and then he kept that love out of the entire middle of the story, on purpose. And the crowd was left staring at the same picture you are staring at now. A son at the bottom, and a father who does not appear, because look what happens in the pig pen. Look what finally happens. The rescue never comes, and the awakening does. When the last borrowed comfort is stripped away, and the boy is left alone with the wreckage and the smell and the silence. Right there, in the worst place he has ever been. At the end of everyone else's money and everyone else's patience, the single most important sentence of his life begins to form. We will read that sentence in a few chapters, and it is the hinge of the whole story. For now, just stand where the father stood, and let the scene say its hard thing. In the story Jesus chose to tell, the far country was allowed to run its full course. The consequences were allowed to arrive, all of them, uncushioned, and in the story Jesus chose to tell, those consequences became the road home. The famine did what comfort never could. It told the boy the truth. Before you can even finish absorbing that, before this video can turn it into anything so tidy as a principle, you should know that real life has a way of testing an idea within the week. Because, in the parable, the far country is a day's walk and a border away. And the father never has to hear about the pig pen while it is happening. You have a cell phone, and some night, sooner or later, on some ordinary Tuesday, it is going to ring at 2 in the morning, and the screen is going to light up with a name that stops your heart. And the famine will not be a story about somebody in a distant country anymore. It will be a voice on the phone, asking you for money. The phone rings at 7 minutes past 2, and she is awake before the second ring. Because a mother's body keeps a watch her mind gave up on years ago. The screen says Tyler. 7 months of silence. And now his name is glowing in a dark bedroom. Her husband sits up beside her. She answers standing, already halfway to the kitchen. The way you take a call you have rehearsed for and are not ready for. His voice is wrong, not drunk. She runs that check in half a second. The way she hates that she can, just tired in a way that frightens her more than slurring would. He says, "Mom, I am sorry to call like this." And then he says it. "I need $3,000. Runt. Mostly. And part of a truck payment. I would not ask if I had anywhere else to go. I will pay you back. I swear." And the kitchen is silent. And the refrigerator hums. And 6 years of praying for the phone to ring lands on this. He finally called. He called because he needs money. Freeze the whole scene. Because this chapter is not really about Tyler. It is about the 90 seconds his mother is standing in, barefoot, on a cold floor, and about the fact that 2 roads run out of this kitchen, and she can only take one. And there is no third road where nothing gets risked. Walk the first road with her. She says yes. It is done in 4 taps on the same phone he called on. And understand what yes buys. Because it buys real things. It buys him rent. Maybe it buys tonight's crisis gone. It buys the sound of his voice unclenching. Buys, "Thank you, Mom. I mean it." Buys a warmth in her chest at being. For one night, Needed again. Useful again. His mother again. Those are not nothing, but she has been on this road before. This is the third call like this in 4 years. And the honest ledger reads like this. The first loan, 1800, vanished, purpose unknown, never mentioned again. The second one went partly to a security deposit and partly to she never asked where. Because asking felt like an accusation, and she could not risk the closeness. And both times, the pattern held. Money, gratitude, a few weeks of easy texting, and then the tide going back out. Silence resuming. Nothing underneath changed except her savings and his practice at making this exact call. And down, under all of it, in the place where she is honest, at 2 in the morning, there is a question she has never let herself finish. When I send it, who am I actually rescuing? Because the wire transfer does 2 jobs. It patches his month, and it buys her sleep. It purchases weeks of not lying awake, wondering if he is okay. Because she made him okay. She can point to it. Somewhere in the yes there is love for him. Real love. And tangled through it. Invisible to everyone, including her. There is relief for her. And the exchange rate between those two has never once been checked. Now walk the other road, she says. Or tries to say. Some version of no. Honey, I love you. I am not going to wire money tonight. Let's talk tomorrow about what is actually going on. Feel what that costs. He may go cold in 1 sentence. Fine. Forget it. Sorry I bothered you. And the click. And then the silence that follows is a different silence than before. Because now it has a reason. And the reason is her. She will lie awake the rest of the night doing the arithmetic of catastrophe. What if this was the real one? What if something happens tonight? This week? And the last thing that ever passed between them was a no. Nobody survives that math clean. And the silence could stretch a year. 2 years. The no might cost her the thread. The thin Christmas phone call thread. The only thread there is, that is the trade. Yes, risks his tomorrow. No risks her only thread to him. Anyone who tells you this choice is simple has never stood barefoot in this kitchen. So this video will not pretend to make her choice. What it can do is give her, and you, the 2 things that cut through the fog at 2 in the morning. The first is a line. And the line is bright. And on one side of it, there should be no hesitation ever. Is he in danger? Or is he in discomfort? If your child is hungry, if they are unsafe, if they are sick, if the call is about a body and not a lifestyle, you move. Every time. Without a committee meeting. Food shows up. The emergency room bill gets handled. The bus ticket out of a dangerous situation gets bought tonight. Nothing in this chapter and nothing in the Bible tells a parent to let a child go hungry to teach them economics. Rescue from danger is always love, but rent for the 3rd time is not danger. A truck payment is not danger. And this is where the second thing comes in. The question that tells the 2 roads apart when they look identical in the dark. Before she answers, she has to get one question honest. Which am I about to serve? His growth, or my relief? Because here is the mechanism nobody explains to parents. The one the last chapter showed us in a pig pen, somewhere out there. The reality has been trying to have a conversation with her son. The rent notice, the empty account, the far country presenting its actual bill. That conversation is not cruelty. That conversation is the last teacher still allowed in the room. She lost her speaking privileges years ago. Every mother of a prodigal knows the exact moment the eyes glaze. But consequences still get through. Consequences are fluent in a language he cannot glaze over. And a wire transfer at 2 in the morning, sent for the third time, does not just pay a landlord. It walks into that classroom and dismisses the teacher. Here, then, is the third truth of this video. And it lands in this kitchen or nowhere. And it should be said gently, because it is the one that sounds wrong the first time you hear it. Love does not always mean removing the consequences of your child's choices. Sometimes love pays the rent, and sometimes love stands in a dark kitchen with a shaking hand and a breaking heart, and refuses to stand between a grown child and the only voice still capable of telling him the truth. In the story Jesus told, no silver ever went into the far country, and the famine was left alone to finish its work. And the famine is what turned the boy toward home. The kindest thing the story did for him was refuse to pad the bottom. The hardest sentence in this chapter is this one. For some children, the kindest thing a parent's love can do is get out of the way of the famine. She is still standing in the kitchen. He is still on the phone, waiting, breathing, and whichever road she takes tonight, when the call ends, she is going to do what you would do. She is going to sink into a chair at that table, next to the empty one, and she is going to pray. And that is where we have to go next. Because after enough nights like this one, something starts to go wrong inside the praying itself. Nobody warns you about it. It does not look like losing your faith. It looks like praying harder than you have ever prayed in your life. Every morning at 6:15, before the coffee finishes, she prays for her son. Same chair by the window, same Bible on her lap, opened but not always read, and the same words, not similar words, the same words in the same order, finishing with the same 3 sentences she has finished with for years. And one Tuesday morning, sitting in that chair, she catches herself doing something that stops her cold. She had said one of the sentences slightly differently, left out a phrase, the one about putting godly friends in his path. Just a slip, the way you skip a stair. And before she even understood what she was doing, she went back to the beginning of the prayer and started over. The whole thing, because it felt, and she heard the thought in her own head as clearly as a voice. It felt like it might not count. Sit with that phrase. Might not count. Count with whom? On what ledger? And underneath that thought, when she went looking, she found its bigger, older brother. The one that had been running her mornings for years without ever introducing itself. If I miss a day, something might happen to him. Do you know that thought? Be honest, at least in the dark of your own chest. The vacation 2 summers ago, when she was so exhausted, she slept through the 6:15 alarm and woke at 9. And the first feeling of the day was not rest. It was guilt, edged with fear, as if she had left a door unlocked 900 miles away. As if her son's safety ran through her consistency, as if God's attention to Tyler was a subscription, and she was the one keeping up the payments. Nobody teaches this fear. It grows on its own, in the dark of the long middle years, out of the most understandable soil there is. Prayer is the only thing left. They took away your voice, your access, your influence. And prayer is the one lever still in the room. So you grip it with everything you have. And so slowly, you never see it happen. The grip becomes the point. Prayer stops being trust and becomes patrol. A watch that must never be dropped. You are no longer talking to your father. You are manning a station, and you cannot be relieved. Because who would take the watch? Look at what that fear quietly believes about God. Because this is where it falls apart. It believes in a father who is mostly looking away. A father whose care for your son switches on when your prayer performs correctly and lapses when you sleep in. A father less committed to your child than you are, who has to be reminded, badgered, kept on task by a woman in a chair by a window. Say it out loud like that, and you can hear it. That is not the Father of Psalm 139, a God who is even there, on the far side of the sea, before your prayer arrives and after your voice gives out. Does not run on your subscription. He was watching your son before you loved him. He does not blink when you sleep. And if you want to know how God actually receives the prayers of an exhausted parent, there is a father in the Gospel of Mark you need to meet, because he is the patron saint of everyone whose faith is running on fumes. Mark, chapter 9. A crowd, an argument, and a father pushing through it with his boy. The boy has been afflicted since childhood by something that throws him into fire and water, and the father has carried this for years. And you can hear every one of those years in how he talks. He has just come from the disciples, who tried to help and failed. One more failure on a lifetime's pile. And he gets to Jesus, and listen to how he asks. If you can do anything, take pity on us and help us, if you can. This is a man whose hope has been beaten so flat he cannot even ask straight anymore. And Jesus catches it and turns it back. If you can, everything is possible for one who believes. And right there, cornered, the father says the most honest sentence any parent has ever said to God. It bursts out of him. Mark says, immediately, like something breaking open. I believe. Help my unbelief. Both halves at once. I believe. And I am full of holes, and I cannot fix the second thing. So, here it is, in the same breath as my faith, because it is all I have. Now watch what Jesus does with a prayer like that, because everything hangs on this. He does not send the man away to shore up his faith and come back with a cleaner offering. He does not grade the prayer. He heals the boy. The half-faith of an exhausted father, offered honestly, was enough, because the power was never stored in the father's faith. The power was standing in front of him, and it only needed to be asked, not impressed. Hear what that means for the chair by the window. The prayer that counts was never the complete one, the word perfect one, the one that starts over when you skip a stair. God is not auditing your phrasing. He is not checking your streak. The trembling prayer counts. The angry one counts. The one that is just his name and yours and no other words. At 2 a.m, counts. You have been keeping a standard God never set. So here is the fourth truth. And of the 5, it may be the one that changes your daily life the most. Prayer is faithfulness. Prayer is not leverage. You have felt the difference already, even if you have never had words for it. Leverage is prayer as a mechanism. Quine, in. Outcome out. Pray enough, and the machine dispenses your child. Grip the lever. Work the lever. Never let go of the lever. But God is not a machine. And your son is not a prize. And you are not an operator. Faithfulness is something else. Faithfulness is showing up in the chair, opening your hands instead of gripping, and putting your child into the only hands with even there for a reach. And then, and this is the part that has to happen every single day. Because your hands creep back toward the lever every single night. Leaving him there. Not leaving him. Leaving him there. The difference between those is the whole Christian life. Listen to the woman in the chair. Some months later, because the prayer by the window has started to change shape. The old prayer, you remember it, was 4 words. God, bring him home. An instruction, an ending, typed out for God to sign. Here is the prayer now, and hear everything that has moved. God, reach him where I cannot. Put truth in his path this week, and put people around him that he might actually listen to, since he will not listen to me. And that is all right. It does not have to be me. And God, while you are working on him, work on me. Show me what needs to change in this house before he ever walks back into it. Did you catch the last line? Something new has entered the praying. Quiet as a key turning. For 6 years, every prayer in that chair has faced one direction. Out the window, toward the far country, toward the child who needs to change. She just prayed about this side of the window. She does not know it yet. But that one line is a door. And behind it is the chapter of this story that nobody signs up for. The one where the light swings around. Before we walk through it, though, there is a night we have to witness. The worst night of Monica's 17 years. And the strangest one, the night she prayed with everything in her, against a ship. And the night God, who loved her, and loved her son, looked at the most desperate prayer she had ever prayed, and said no. It is the year 383, and Monica has been praying for 12 years, and she has just made a decision that any mother watching this video will understand in her bones. She cannot reach her son with words. Fine. Then she will simply refuse to leave his side. Wherever he goes, she goes. She has already followed him from their little hometown to Carthage, the big city, the far country itself. If she cannot argue him home, she will outlast him. She will be there, praying in the next room, for as long as it takes. And then Augustine, 28 years old now, brilliant, restless, famous in the city as a teacher of rhetoric, decides Carthage is too small for him. He is going to Rome. He has heard the students there are serious, disciplined, nothing like the young wreckers of Carthage who disrupt his lectures for sport. And, though he would not have said this part out loud, there is a whole sea between Rome and his mother's tears. Monica finds out, and she does the thing you would do. She follows him to the harbor. Picture the port of Carthage on that evening. Because this is one of the most important nights in the history of Christian parenting. And it smells like salt and tar and rope, ships at anchor, cargo going up the planks, and a middle-aged widow from a small town, standing on the dock beside her grown son, gripping his arm, refusing to leave. She has come to do one of 2 things: stop him from sailing, or sail with him. Those are the options. There is no third option in which she goes home and he crosses the sea alone. She has not prayed for 12 years to wave goodbye to the story. From a dock, Augustine looks at his mother, and he lies to her. He tells her the ship is not leaving yet. There is a friend he has to see off. Some business at the water. Delays? You know how sailing is. The wind has to be right. He suggests, gently, that she go rest for the night. And there was a small chapel near the shore, a memorial to a martyr. a place a devout woman could pass the night in prayer. Monica goes. Of course she goes. If she cannot stand on the dock all night, she will do the more powerful thing. She will spend the night asking God to block that ship. Understand exactly what she prayed for. Because Augustine himself tells us, she was not praying vaguely for his well-being. She was praying hour after hour, on her knees in that chapel, with the harbor in earshot, for one specific thing. Do not let my son sail. Stop the ship. Hold the winds. In her mind, Rome could only mean losing him further. A bigger city. A deeper, far country. Her boy swallowed whole where she could not follow. Keep him here. Near me. Near the church. Near the sound of my voice. She wept, and she begged, and she held nothing back. One of the most devoted mothers who ever lived. Storming heaven all night for one closed door. While she prayed, the wind came up. The ship sailed on the night wind, and her son was on it. Augustine had planned it that way from the start. The friend, the delay, the suggestion that she rest, all of it was staging. He waited until his mother was on her knees, and then he crossed the water in the dark. Morning comes to the port of Carthage. Monica walks out of the chapel, eyes raw from a night of crying, and looks at the anchorage, and the ship is gone. The sea is empty all the way to the horizon. And Augustine, remember, is the one who wrote this scene down. Years later, describing a moment he did not even witness, a moment he caused. He says she went nearly mad with grief on that shore. She filled the ears of God with complaint. Why? She had prayed the prayer. She had done everything right. Everything. For 12 years. And heaven's answer was an empty harbor and a son who had used her own praying as his cover to escape. Stand on that shore with her for a minute. Because you have stood there. Maybe your empty harbor was a phone number that got changed. A wedding you learned about from someone else. A moving truck that pulled away while you were still composing the text you never sent. The specific prayer. The desperate one. The one you meant more than you have ever meant anything. Answered with a no so flat, it felt like mockery. This is the moment faith either breaks or goes deeper. And on that morning, Monica could not have told you which was happening to her. Now watch where the ship went. The ship went to Rome. And Rome disappointed him within the year. The students cheated him out of his fees. The sect he belonged to began to crack under his own questions. Its famous teacher turning out, face to face, to be a charming lightweight. So, when a position opened in the north, in a city called Milan, Augustine took it. A government appointment. A career move. Nothing more. And Milan is where Ambrose was. Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan, was the one man in the Roman world Augustine could not condescend to. A first-class intellect. A better speaker than the professionals. And this is the part that undid Augustine. A Christian whose mind was fully awake all his life. Augustine had filed the faith of his childhood under his mother's religion. Sweet and small. Then he sat in Milan and listened to Ambrose preach. Week after week. At first, purely to study the technique. The way a rival studies film. And through the technique, the content started getting in. The scriptures he had mocked as crude turned out to have depths he had never been shown. The questions no one back home would sit with. Ambrose sat with, for the first time in his adult life. Augustine met a Christianity with room for his whole mind, and it met him in a city he had never planned to live in. At the end of a chain of events that began with a ship, his mother begged God to stop. Augustine saw it all clearly. Looking back, when he wrote out the story of his life, he wrote it as one long prayer addressed directly to God. And when he got to the night at the harbor, he stopped and marveled at what the no had been hiding. "You knew," he wrote to God, "what she was really asking, and that night you refused her the thing she asked, to give her the thing she had always asked. She wept for the ship to stay. The ship carried me toward the answer to her lifetime of tears." Read that again, slowly, because it may be for someone watching this video. God refused what she requested tonight in order to grant what she had been requesting all her life. Her prayer at the harbor was for geography. Keep him close. Her prayer of 17 years was for his soul. Bring him home to you. And on the night those two prayers finally pointed in opposite directions, God ignored the small one and kept the great one. And it looked, from the shore at dawn, exactly like abandonment. She could not see Milan from Carthage. She could not see Ambrose, or the sermons, or the garden that was coming. All she could see was water where a ship used to be. So, here is what the port of Carthage puts into your hands. And hold it carefully, because it is not a promise that every no hides a Milan. It is something sturdier than that. It is proof that an empty harbor is not evidence of an absent God. The morning your specific, desperate prayer came back refused, that morning proved nothing about the ending. The refusal you are grieving right now may be neutral, and it may be a ship already moving in the dark, along a route you would never have chosen and could never have imagined, toward a city you have never heard of, where the answer is waiting. You cannot know which. That is the hard gift of this story. Monica did not know either. She got up off that shore, and eventually she did the most stubborn thing in her whole 17 years. She booked passage and followed him across the sea anyway. An aging widow crossing the Mediterranean alone after a son who had lied to her face. She still had 3 more years to wait, and she had no idea it was only 3. But something was moving now. And it is time for this video to show you the 2 most important moments in this entire story. Side by side. A pig pen in a parable, and a garden in Milan. 2 prodigals, hitting the floor of themselves. And in both scenes, if you look around for the parents, you will find something that will change how you pray. Go back to the pig pen. The boy from Luke 15 is still standing in it, right where we left him 4 chapters ago, hungry enough to envy the animals, at the bottom of the far country. And then Luke gives us the hinge of the whole parable. 5 words in most English Bibles, and the King James renders them in a way worth keeping. When he came to himself, like a man surfacing from underwater, like waking. Luke does not say the boy repented yet. That comes after. This is the moment before repentance. The moment the anesthetic wears off and a person suddenly sees his actual life from the outside, as if for the first time, and listen to the very first thought that crosses his mind when his mind finally comes back online. How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. Do you see what surfaced first? Home did. Not home as an idea. Home in detail. He is remembering something absolutely ordinary. The economics of his father's kitchen. The fact that even the hired hands, the day laborers at the bottom of the household, ate well and had leftovers. That is a memory with a smell attached. Bread in the servants' quarters. Loaves nobody was even worried about. Some completely unremarkable afternoon, years ago, that boy walked past the workers eating and paid no attention at all. And his memory kept the film anyway. And in the far country, at the bottom, that unremarkable afternoon came back and became a road. This is what your years actually built, and no famine can take it. Every ordinary supper, every bedtime prayer he squirmed through. Every Sunday he sat there bored. Every hymn he absorbed without listening. Every act of quiet decency between his mother and father that he never once commented on. You thought nobody was paying attention, and you may have been right, but the film was rolling. A child raised in a house of grace is carrying an archive he does not know he owns. And the day he comes to himself, wherever that happens, the archive is what tells him which direction home is. The famine woke him up. The memory gave him somewhere to go. You built the memory. That was your part, and you did it years ago. And it is finished. And it worked. Now the question this chapter exists to ask, in the moment of the miracle, in the pig pen, at the exact instant the boy comes to himself. Look around the scene. Where is the father? Home. 17 miles away, or 70. Not present. Not narrating. Not orchestrating. No letter arrived that morning. No family friend happened by the pig farm with a well-timed word. The most important moment of the boy's life happens between the boy and the truth. Alone, hold that. And now come to Milan. 386. Late summer, because the same scene is about to happen in history instead of parable. And this time we have the transcript. Augustine is 31, and he is a man coming apart in the best possible way. Milan has undone him. Ambrose has answered the old objections one by one, and the sect has collapsed behind him. And intellectually, the fight is over. He now believes it is all true, and he still cannot move, because believing was never his deepest problem. His appetites have him, habits with years of seniority, a life he cannot imagine wanting and cannot imagine leaving. And he has been standing at the edge of surrender for months, the way a man stands at the edge of cold water. He even prayed about it. One of the most honest prayers ever recorded. Lord, make me pure, but not yet. On this day, the not yet breaks. A visitor's story about ordinary men giving their whole lives to God in an instant leaves Augustine shaking with shame at his own paralysis. He bolts from the house into the garden, his friend Alypius trailing him. And then even Alypius is too much company, and Augustine throws himself down alone under a fig tree. And the whole dammed-up grief of 17 wasted years comes out of him at once. He is sobbing into the dirt, asking God, how long? Tomorrow and tomorrow. Why not now? And from over the garden wall, from some neighboring house, comes a child's voice, a little boy or girl, playing some game, chanting a phrase in a sing-song. Tolle, lege, tolle, lege. Take up and read. Take up and read. Augustine goes still. He tries to remember any children's game with those words, and cannot, and decides, in the strange clarity of that moment, that the voice is a command meant for him. There is a book lying where he and Alypius had been sitting. The letters of Paul. He walks back, picks it up, opens it at random, and reads the first lines his eyes land on. A passage from Romans about putting away the works of darkness and clothing yourself in Christ. He would say for the rest of his life that he did not need to read another sentence. Light, he wrote, flooded into my heart, and every shadow of doubt scattered. 17 years of running, and it ended in the length of one paragraph. In a garden, with the dirt still on his face. Now do the same thing we did at the pig pen. Look around the garden. Where is Monica? In the house. Inside. Somewhere. Out of sight. She has crossed a sea for this man. Followed him from Thagaste to Carthage to Rome to Milan. Prayed for 17 years within these very walls. And at the moment, the answer finally comes. At the exact minute of the miracle. She is not present. She is not even aware it is happening. Put the two scenes side by side and let them say what they actually say. A parable and a history, agreeing with each other in both stories. The turning point arrives beyond the parents' control. The father did not schedule the famine. Monica did not arrange the child's voice over the wall. Neither parent engineered the moment. And neither parent could have, because coming to yourself is, by its nature, a collision between one soul and the truth. And no third person can stage it. Not even a mother who crossed the Mediterranean for the chance. Hear this carefully, because it matters what this does and does not mean. It does not mean you will be absent if your child ever turns. Some children wake up mid-conversation with their mother. Some fathers get to be in the room. And some reconciliations happen at a kitchen table with both parents present and crying. God writes those stories too. What it means is this: the awakening does not depend on you being there. And it does not depend on you at all. So, if the moment ever comes and you find out about it 3 days later, second-hand, over the phone, your absence from the scene was not your failure. The work you were given was never the moment itself, and your work is still everywhere in it. You are in the archive, the smell of bread, the memory that gives the waking soul its direction home. You are in the years of prayer that carried the whole story to the garden's edge. The father built the house the boy remembered in the pig pen. Monica built the soul that knew what tolle ledge meant. The parents did not make the moment happen. And the moment is unimaginable without them. Her part came next. And Augustine recorded it. He and Alypius walked into the house and told her, and she leaped for joy and blessed God. And Augustine wrote down the detail that ought to be framed in the home of every praying parent on earth. You converted me to yourself, he wrote to God, and my mother saw that you had given her, concerning me, far more than she used to ask for with her poor weeping prayers, more than she used to ask. For 17 years, she had prayed for a son who stopped running. God handed her back a son who would spend the next 44 years pouring out everything he had for the faith she raised him in, whose books would carry the gospel across 16 centuries. All the way to this video. She asked for a homecoming. She was given a life she did not have the imagination to request. So pray for the pig pen. Pray for the garden. Pray for a moment you may never see. And make your peace ahead of time, with the possibility of hearing about it the way Monica did, walking in after it is finished, from a face you almost do not recognize because the running has gone out of it, which leaves only the question that every parent watching this has been holding underneath every other question. The one this whole video has been walking toward. What if that face actually shows up? After the years, after the silence, after everything, what happens? And what should you do? And what will it ask of you? On the day your child comes home. The father in the story has been waiting on his porch for 4 chapters. It is time to let him see the road. The boy in the pigpen stands up. He has a speech now. He composed it right there among the animals. And Luke records it word for word. And it is a good speech. Honest, all the way through. Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. Notice the plan inside the plan. He is not coming home to be a son again. He has done the math on what he wasted. And sonship is not on the table anymore. So he will apply for a job, room, board, a place at the edge of the property. It is the application of a man who believes the relationship is dead and hopes the mercy is not. And he starts walking. Days of road, rehearsing the speech. And with every mile, the question grows that every returning child carries. What is waiting at the end of this? A locked gate. A lecture. The face of a father doing the arithmetic of what this homecoming will cost him. Then Luke writes the sentence. The one that has broken hearts open for 2,000 years. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him. Stop there before the running starts. Still a long way off. And the father saw him. You do not spot a figure at that distance by accident. You spot a figure at that distance because your eyes have made a habit of that road. Because some part of every day, for years, the man's gaze has drifted to the horizon. Checking, all this time, while the story kept him home, while he sent no silver and staged no rescue. He was watching the road. Restraint and hope had been living in the same chest the entire time. He never went into the far country. He also never once stopped looking at the way out of it. And when the shape on the road resolves into his son, the father runs. Understand what the crowd listening to Jesus understood instantly. A landowner of that world. A patriarch with servants and standing. Did not run. Ever. Running meant hitching up the long robe, baring your legs, pounding down a public road in front of the whole village. And dignity was not a small thing in that world. It was the currency a man's family lived on. This man spends it all in one motion. And there may be a darker reason for the sprint. One the first listeners would have felt. A son who had shamed his father the way this boy had, who had wished him dead and burned the family's wealth among Gentiles, could expect the village to meet him first, and not kindly. The father does not just run out of joy. He runs to get there before anyone else can. He puts his own body between his boy and every consequence the road home still held, absorbing the shame in public so the son will not. The boy starts the speech. Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy. And he never reaches the job application. The father is already shouting past him to the servants. The best robe, his own robe, the ring for his hand, sandals for his feet, the fattened calf. A feast. Every item is a sentence in a language the whole household spoke. Robe, ring, in sandals. Those are not gifts for a hired man. Those are the uniform of a son. The boy came home hoping for employment, and before he can finish asking, he is dressed in restored sonship. And the father has not said one word about the money. That is the picture. Now this video has to do the hardest thing it will do, which is to be honest with you about that picture. In two directions at once. Because you have just watched the scene every praying parent plays in their mind. And there are two ways it gets mishandled. And both of them wound people. Here is the first honesty. Look at the word this chapter is built on. If. If they come home, not when. You have noticed that a parable is not a promise. And you noticed it with a flinch. So, let us say it plainly, instead of leaving it in the shadows. Luke 15 is Jesus painting the heart of God toward every returning sinner. It is a true picture, the truest ever painted. What it is not is a contract with your name on it, guaranteeing that your particular child rounds the bend of your particular road on some schedule you can survive. You know, parents, maybe you are these parents who have watched that road for 25 years. Some parents watch it to the end of their own lives. If this video told you your ending is the parable's ending, it would be selling you the very comfort it promised not to sell. And the price would come due on some future hard night, when the road stayed empty another year and you concluded God had broken a promise he never actually made. So here is what you can carry instead. And it holds. Luke 15 does not give every parent a timetable. It gives every parent a picture of grace. It tells you what God is like toward the returning. Forever, without condition or expiration. It tells you that if your child ever turns, at 29 or at 61, they will not meet a locked gate at the end of the road. Because the Father they are actually returning to is this one, the running kind. What the story guarantees is his heart. And his heart is the one thing in this whole long ordeal that was never in question. And now the second honesty, the one for the day the phone actually rings. Because some of you will get that day. And almost nothing in church prepared you for what it is really like. It will probably not look like the painting. There will likely be no figure on a road at golden hour. It will be a text message, out of nowhere, on an ordinary Thursday. Hey, been thinking. Could we maybe get coffee sometime? 11 words, after 4 years of silence. And your hands will shake so hard you can barely type back. Or a phone call where the voice is careful and formal, like someone walking on ice. Or your child at a holiday table, present but guarded, testing whether the ice holds. And here is what you must know before that coffee. The child who comes back rarely comes back all at once, and almost never comes back the way they left. He may be back at your table and nowhere near your faith. She may want her parents again and still want nothing to do with your church. Maybe for years. Maybe always. And if her return to you gets treated as merely the first step of a program, as leverage toward the rest, she will feel the agenda in a week and the ice will crack. You will be handed back a piece of what you lost, and everything in you will want to grab for the whole thing. And the piece is the test. Whether you can receive half a homecoming with a whole heart, whether you can let a returned relationship just be the miracle it is, without immediately invoicing it for the rest. And you will discover something, the parable, in its mercy. Compressis. The robe and the ring can be given in a moment. Grace really is that fast. And yours should be. The gate flies open. The arms go all the way around. No probation. No speech about the money. But the household, the daily fabric of trust between two people, that gets rebuilt at the speed of humans, which is slow. There will be a dinner where an old subject surfaces and the whole table goes quiet. There will be a morning you catch yourself bracing for the disappearance, because your reflexes learned the old pattern, and reflexes are slow learners. Grace is a gift you hand over whole on day one. Trust is a wall rebuilt stone by both of you. And the returning child has stones to carry too. That is not a failure of forgiveness. That is what forgiveness looks like when it has to live in a house. One last thing about that day. Maybe the most important. When it comes, resist the sentence. You know the sentence. It has been waiting in your chest for years. Wearing different clothes. I told you so. Or its churchier cousin. See, this is what we prayed for. God finally got through to you. Or the wounded one. Do you have any idea what you put your mother through? Every one of them is understandable. Every one of them is a bill presented at the gate, and the father in the story, who was owed more than any of us, tore up the bill and threw a feast. And that is the whole assignment. The day of return is not the day of accounting. If your child comes up that road, your one job, the job you have been in training for through every chapter of this video, is to run. But the parable does not end at the feast. And this is the part almost nobody preaches. Because while the music is starting and the calf is roasting and the whole household is pouring into the celebration, Jesus moves the camera away from the party, out past the lit windows, into the darkening yard. There is someone standing out there. He has been in this family the entire time. Faithful, present, dependable. And this story has ignored him for exactly as long as you have. And he is not coming inside. There is another child in this house, and it is time somebody noticed. The older brother is coming in from the fields when he hears it. That is the detail to catch first. The fields. It is late in the day, and he is walking home from work, from his father's work, the way he has every day of his life. And the sound reaches him across the yard before anyone tells him anything. Music, dancing, the unmistakable noise of a feast at full roar. He has to ask a servant what is going on at his own house. Think about that. The party is for his own brother. And everyone in the household knew before he did. Even the celebration, from his side of the yard, arrives as one more piece of evidence that he is the son nobody thinks about. The servant tells him, "Your brother is home, and your father has killed the fattened calf." Safe and sound. And the older brother stands out there in the dark, and he will not go in. The father comes out to him. Catch that. 2. Because it is the same father being the same father. He left the feast for the boy in the yard, exactly as he ran up the road for the boy in the pig filth. 2 lost sons, 2 trips out to meet them, and the older son's answer to his father's pleading is one of the rawest speeches in the Bible. Years of pressure escaping through a crack all at once. "Look, all these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. Here, everything packed in there. All these years, he has been keeping a ledger, and the ledger is long. Slaving. His word for sonship in his father's house. This son of yours. He cannot even say my brother. And underneath every line of it, the actual wound. The anger is dressed over. You never threw a party for me. You never even gave me a goat. I stayed, and staying turned out to be invisible. Most sermons on this passage go after the older brother, his resentment, his self-righteousness, and fair enough. Jesus aimed that edge at the Pharisees listening. But this video is for parents, and parents need to stand in a different spot tonight. Stand where the father stands, out in the dark yard, looking at the child who never left, and hearing, for the first time, how long that child has been hurting inside the house. Because here is what happens to a family with a prodigal in it. And it happens slowly. And nobody chooses it. And almost nobody catches it until real damage is done. The missing child becomes the son, and the whole family starts to orbit. You know the orbit. Every family dinner bends toward the empty chair. Some mention of him, some update, some silence that is about him, even when no words are. Every prayer at the table finds its way to Tyler within 3 sentences. Holidays get planned around his possible appearance. Will he come? What if he comes? And the whole day carries his fingerprints, whether he shows or not. Mom's mood tracks his texting like a tide chart. And everyone in the house learns to read the tide before speaking. The family calendar, the family budget of worry, the family's entire emotional weather. All of it generated by someone who is not there. And the ones who are there, the daughter who calls every Sunday, the son who lives 20 minutes away and mows your lawn in the summer and shows up early to every birthday, the kids who kept the faith, or at least kept the family, who did the ordinary, faithful, unglamorous thing year after year. They begin, without anyone deciding it, to disappear in plain sight. Their news gets half your attention. Their kids' recitals get penciled in around the ache. They watch you scan the door at their own celebrations. And they learn the lesson this house is accidentally teaching, the same lesson the older brother learned in the fields, which is that in this family, the way to be seen is to be gone. Presence reads as background. Absence reads as headline. Some of you have a daughter who said it out loud once. In an argument she instantly apologized for, and it has rung in your ears ever since. Something like, "I know. Mom, I know. Everything is about him." She was not being cruel. She was filing a report from the yard. And it is not only the children. There is a marriage in that house too. 2 parents grieving the same child almost never grieve on the same schedule or in the same style. And the mismatch grinds. One wants to talk about it tonight. Again. And one cannot bear to open it again tonight. And each reads the other wrong. She thinks he does not care. He thinks she cannot let go. Some couples have quietly gone years without a conversation that was truly about the 2 of them. Their own life, their own marriage. Because the absent one sits invisibly at the center of every talk. A missing child can become the only thing a couple has left in common. And that is its own slow emergency. Now watch the father in the story. Because in one sentence, he does the thing this whole chapter is begging you to do. He looks at his older son, the hurt one, the invisible one, and he says, "My son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. My son." Some translations catch the tenderness of the original better. Something closer to my child. My dear child. And then, "You are always with me." He says the thing out loud. He puts words on the boy's presence, the years, the faithfulness, the every single day of him. And everything I have is yours, not the leftovers after your brother's feast. Everything, already, all along. Here is the assignment hiding in that sentence. And it may be the most practical thing in this entire video. The father said it out loud, not felt it. Said it. And the ones who stayed in your house need it, said out loud too. And soon. And specifically. The daughter needs a phone call that is entirely about her. No updates on her brother, offered or requested. A call where you ask about her job and her kids and her heart, and you take notes like it is the news of the day. Because it is. The faithful son needs to hear. In words, Something like, "I see what you have been all these years, and I have been so far away inside my own grief that I have not said it, and I am saying it now. Your spouse needs an evening. This week, with a rule. We are not going to talk about him tonight. We are going to talk about us." And if that feels almost like a betrayal of the missing one, notice that feeling. Because that feeling is the orbit. And this is what leaving it feels like. Loving the absent child is right. Building the family's whole life around the absence is something else. And the difference between those two is a line you cannot see when you are inside it. Jesus, with terrible gentleness, ended his most famous parable not with the prodigal's feast, but with the father in the dark yard, pleading with the child who stayed. The story is unfinished on purpose. We never learn if the older brother went inside. Jesus handed that ending to every family that would ever hear the story, yours included. So before this video goes one chapter further, stop and take the census of your own house. Who has been standing in your yard, in the dark, is faithful and unfeasted, while every light in the family pointed down the road? Go say the sentence to them. You are always with me. Everything I have is yours. Say it this week, because here is what is coming. And the older brother is the doorway to it. This whole chapter has been about a family reorganizing its life around one absence. And there is one more person in that house doing the same thing, more completely than anyone. The person standing at the window, the person whose every day, every prayer, every plan has quietly become a waiting room. We need to talk about you. There is a woman in Ohio. Let us call her Carol. And for 6 years, she has not left her house for more than 2 nights in a row. Her husband has stopped suggesting the trip to see his brother in Arizona. He knows the answer, and he knows the reason, though it has been years since she said it out loud. What if he comes home and nobody is here? That is the whole architecture of her life now. Built in one sentence. The son's room upstairs is exactly as he left it, dusted every other week. A museum with one visitor. She keeps his favorite cereal in the pantry, replacing the box when it expires. On his birthday, she cooks his meal and sets his place. And the family eats it mostly in silence. Nobody plans a life like this. It assembles itself. One reasonable decision at a time. Skip the vacation this year. He seemed shaky this spring. Keep the room ready. It is just a room. Stay near the phone. That is just love. Each choice defensible. And the sum of the choices is a woman standing in a doorway for 6 years, facing a road, while behind her back, an entire life quietly waits for permission to be lived. And the waiting has been expensive. A marriage that has become a logistics partnership between 2 people who used to laugh. Friendships gone thin, because she cancels. And eventually, people stop asking. Grandchildren in another state who know her mostly as a voice on birthdays. Her Bible study asked her to help lead, and she said no. And it was not even a hard decision, because everything is no now. Everything is provisional now. All of it could conflict with the one appointment that has no date. Here is the sentence she would never say. And it is the truth underneath the whole structure. Carol has decided, quote, somewhere below the level of deciding, that she is not allowed to live until her son comes home. Her joy is being held in escrow, and she would tell you, if you got close enough to ask, that this is what faithfulness looks like. This is hope. This is a mother's love. This chapter exists to say, as gently as possible, that it is not. And the fifth truth of this video is the door out of that doorway. Hope does not require you to put the rest of your life on hold. Go back one last time to the Father in Luke 15, because we have already seen the evidence and walked right past it. The Father saw his Son while the Son was still a long way off. We said it before. You only spot a figure at that distance if your eyes have made a habit of the road. But now notice the other half of the scene, the half that was hiding in plain sight. When the boy comes home, what does he come home to? A working estate. Servants going about their duties, herds tended, fields kept, a fattened calf, which exists only in a household that has been planning feasts and marking occasions all along. There is a robe worth giving, a ring that means something, music and dancing arranged within the hour. Because this is a house that still knows how. Do you see the man this evidence describes? He watched the road every day, and he ran the farm every day. Both. The waiting lived inside a working life, not in place of one. If the father had spent those years seated at the gate, the estate dissolving behind him, then the day his son finally limped home, the boy would have found a ruin, and a broken man in the doorway of it, and the homecoming would have crushed them both under everything it had cost. Instead, the son came home to a father who had a life, and it was the life, the intact, generous, still functioning life that had a feast to throw. The father teaches the posture, and the posture has a name. Watchfulness is a direction the heart faces. It was never meant to be a room you live in. So here is the word for Carol, and for you. And it should be said the way you would say it to a beloved friend, with a hand on her arm. Keep the door of grace open, but do not spend the rest of your life standing in the doorway. Keep the door open. Yes, always. Keep the phone number the same. Keep the welcome warm and the road watched and the heart soft. Keep the cereal in the pantry if the cereal helps. And then turn around and walk back into your one life and live it. Take the trip to Arizona. Say yes to leading the study. Learn the grandchildren while they are still young enough to be learned. Let your marriage be about something again. Laugh at a dinner table without checking the laugh against the ache. And when the guilt comes, and it will come, it will whisper that every unclaimed joy is a small betrayal of the one who is missing. Answer it with the truth. Your gladness does not delay his homecoming. Your grief does not fund it. There is no exchange rate between your suffering and his rescue. And the God who is even there with your son does not need your life shut down as collateral. He wants to be your God too, the father of the watching parent. And there is a real person under all that watching, a person with a name, whose own soul he has cared about since before her son was born. Some of you have not brought God a single sentence about your own life in years. Every prayer, his name, his need, his rescue, a holy unselfishness that has quietly starved you. Your father would like to hear about you again. Now, Monica has walked beside us through this whole video, and it is here, at the end of her road, that she has one last thing to teach. And it is not the thing you expect. After the garden in Milan, Monica got what almost no waiting parent gets. She got to see it. She stood at the font at Easter and watched Ambrose baptize her son with her own eyes. A few months later, mother and son were at the port city of Ostia, waiting for a ship back to Africa. And one evening, the two of them stood at a window overlooking a garden, just talking. Augustine wrote the conversation down. They talked about the life of heaven, And he says that for a moment, the two of them seemed to touch it together. Right there at the window. The mother and the son she had cried over for 17 years. Side by side at the edge of eternity. And then Monica said something that stops you. Son, she told him, as for me, I find no further delight in this life. There was one thing I wanted. One reason I asked to remain a little longer. And my God has granted it beyond all abundance. What am I still doing here? Within days she took a fever, and in less than 2 weeks she was gone. At 56, far from home, with Augustine at her side, he grieved her the rest of his life. And because he wrote it all down, her 17 years of tears have been teaching parents to pray for 16 centuries. She got the ending. And here is what her story will not let us do. It will not let us pretend that every faithful parent gets her ending. And it will not let us conclude that the ending is what made her faithful. There were mothers in Monica's own generation who prayed just as long, wept just as hard, and went to their graves with the road still empty. Their prayers were not weaker. Their God was not colder. And their stories are not failures. Because the worth of those years of love was never contingent on the outcome. Any more than God's love for your child is contingent on his return. If your story ends like Monica's, it will be grace. If it does not, your watching and praying and loving will still have been among the truest things ever done on this earth. Seen entirely. Wasted not at all. That is why this fifth truth exists. Your hope was never meant to be anchored to an outcome you cannot see from here. It was meant to be anchored to a God you can talk to tonight. Anchor it there, and you can live. Actually live. In the meantime, whatever the meantime holds, which brings us, at last, down out of the big story, back to ground level, back to Monday. Because 5 truths are now on the table, and a question has been waiting patiently since chapter 7, and it deserves an answer before this video ends. All right, but what do I actually do tomorrow morning? Way back in chapter 7, standing at the counter with the phone, we put some questions on a shelf and promised to come back for them. Should you text again? Should you apologize one more time? Should you stop bringing up faith? It is tomorrow morning now, an ordinary Monday, and the questions come down off the shelf, not as a system. You were promised no system, and there is none. Because your child is a person, and persons do not have user manuals. What follows is more like what a wise friend would tell you over coffee. One who has walked this road 20 years ahead of you. Start with the thread. Keep contact alive if any contact is possible. And keep it free. Free means it costs your child nothing to receive. A text that says, "Saw a truck like your old one today. I thought of you," costs him nothing. He does not have to defend himself, explain himself, or answer a question about his soul. He can read it in 4 seconds. I feel one small warm thing and put the phone down. And that is a complete transaction, not a failed one. Send them at a rhythm that does not flood him. And send them with the reply expectation, set all the way to 0, because the moment you need the reply, he will feel the need through the glass. And warmth turns into pressure. You are not fishing. You are keeping a single lamp lit in a window, month after month, so that no matter how far the road bends, one thing in his world stays fixed. The lamp does not chase. The lamp just refuses to go out. Then, the apology. And this one needs care. Because there are two completely different things that go by that name. If there is a real wound you dealt, a specific one, and it has never been named, then name it once, and name it clean. That means specific. The words, the year, the thing itself, not the fog of, I am sorry if I ever did anything. It means no defense attached. No explanation of what you were going through. No, but you have to understand, and it means no invoice at the end. No waiting silence, where forgiveness is supposed to be inserted. Say it, mean it, and let it go do its work for however long the work takes. That apology is a gift, and it may be the most powerful single thing you ever do. But the other thing, the fifth apology for the already forgiven thing, the re-apology offered every phone call. That is not a gift. That is you, asking your child to come manage your guilt. One more burden handed to someone already carrying plenty. One clean apology. Once. Then trust it. And stop. The faith question. Should you keep bringing up God, church, the praying you are doing? Here is the honest answer, and it may sting. If every conversation bends toward the altar, your child stops hearing love and starts hearing recruitment. And worse, he starts screening the calls, because he can feel the agenda coming before he picks up. You already know this. You have heard the flinch through the phone. So stop steering. Talk to your son about his dog, his job, the playoffs, the truck, and let the conversation be entirely, gloriously, about nothing, because those nothing conversations are the thread. And the thread is everything. This is not hiding your faith. He knows exactly what you believe. You spent 20 years showing him, and that knowledge has not gone anywhere. Wear your faith as the thing that makes you warm, steady, unanxious, interested in his actual life, and it will preach in a frequency he has no filter against. Live it loud, say it rarely, and when he brings it up, and someday, in a parking lot or a hospital waiting room or a phone call at midnight, he might be findable, to be unshocked, and mostly, be quiet and listen. Now, the harder assignments, the ones inside your own walls. Find one person to carry this with. One, not a committee. Somewhere in your world is a friend or a small group or a pastor who can hear the unsanded version, the version the break room never gets. And praying parents who carry this entirely alone for years get crushed slowly under it. Shame is the thing that keeps you from asking. The sense that your empty chair is an indictment. And chapter 4 already closed that case. Go tell one safe person the truth. And while we are inside your walls, if the sleepless nights have become most nights, if the anxiety has moved in as a tenant, if you have been white-knuckling a depression for 2 years because seeking help felt like giving up on him, hear this plainly. See the doctor. Sit with the counselor. Taking care of your own mind is not a betrayal of your child. A parent maintaining her own health is not a parent who loves less. She is a parent planning to still be here, intact, whenever the road produces its news. And the last assignment is the prayer itself. Somewhere in these years, alongside every prayer for him, begin praying for you. You have heard 2 prayers already in this video from the woman at the counter. And tonight, all these years in, here is the third one. It is the same woman, same counter, same darkened kitchen, But listen to what the years and the truths have done. God, love him tonight in all the ways I cannot. Put your people in his path, and keep my lamp lit in his window. Guide me in how to love him from right here, this far away. Without pushing and without pretending, keep my heart soft toward him, and soft toward you, because you know how many nights it wants to go hard. And teach me, one more day, to trust you with what I cannot control, including how this story ends, especially how this story ends. Amen. Set it next to the first prayer, the 4-word one from chapter 7. God, bring him home. Nothing about her love has shrunk. She wants him home tonight exactly as much as she wanted it 6 years ago. More. But the prayer has stopped being instructions issued to heaven and become something else. A handing over, renewed nightly, of the one outcome she was never going to be able to carry anyway. The first prayer gripped. This one opens. And a parent who prays with open hands can finally do the thing that has been impossible for years. She can set the whole weight down at night and sleep, which is the last thing left to see. It is late now. The kitchen light is still on in that house where we started. All those chapters ago. One more scene. And it is short. And then you can go. Come back to the kitchen where this whole thing started. Same house. Same Sunday evening. The table was set for 4 again tonight. And it was cooked for 3 again. And the dishes are done now. And the room has gone quiet the way kitchens do at the end of a night. The photograph is still on the refrigerator. The whole family squinting into that mountain sun. The boy in the middle still laughing at his father's joke. 8 years and a lifetime ago, and the phone is still on the counter, face down, where it always is. She crosses the room, wiping her hands on the towel, and she stops beside it. There was a time, and it lasted years, when this exact moment owned her. The last check of the night, picking it up, waking the screen, finding nothing, and carrying the nothing up the stairs to bed, where it would sit on her chest until 2 in the morning. Tonight, she looks at the phone, one breath, and she does not pick it up. She wipes the counter instead, folds the towel over the oven handle, the way her own mother used to. And then she reaches for the switch by the doorway, the one that has burned like a signal fire every night for 6 years. And she turns off the kitchen light, and the room goes dark behind her, and she climbs the stairs to bed. Hear what that is not, because from the outside it could be mistaken for surrender, and it is the opposite of surrender. She has not given up. She will pray for her son tomorrow morning, in the chair by the window, the way she has for 6 years, and the morning after that, for as long as she has mornings. The door of grace in this house is still wide open. The number is still the same. The welcome is still warm. And if a certain truck ever pulls into this driveway, at any hour of any night, the woman asleep upstairs will be down those stairs before the engine stops. She turned off the light because she finally knows something. And it took her 6 years and everything you have watched tonight to learn it. Keeping watch and keeping control are not the same thing. One of them was always her job. The other one was always God's. She was given the responsibility to love her son. The power over his heart was never hers. And setting down what was never yours to carry is not quitting. Her reach ends at a phone screen. And God's reach has no far side of the sea. Her love does not have to stand between her boy and every consequence, because some consequences are the last honest voice left in his life. Her prayers were never coins in a machine. They were a daughter talking to her father. And half faith offered honestly has always been enough. And her hope, as of tonight, is finally anchored where it can hold. Not to an ending she cannot see, but to a God she just said goodnight to. 5 truths. One ordinary woman, sleeping, and her son, 900 miles west of that dark kitchen. His story is still being written tonight. Maybe nothing is moving. Maybe everything is. Maybe there is a famine coming that no one can see yet. Or a Milan he has never heard of. Or a garden, years out, with a voice on the other side of a wall. His mother cannot know, and she has stopped pretending she can. And here is the thing she would want you to hear before you go. The story does not need her lamp burning to find its way. The hand that guided a ship out of Carthage against a praying mother's tears and turned that very ship into the answer does not lose track of one man in the dark. The kitchen light was never what kept watch over her son. Even there, his hand will guide. Even there, so set the table when it helps, and put the cereal back if it helps, and keep the door open all your days. But when night comes, you have permission now, from the Father who watches every road on earth, and never sleeps, and never blinks. Turn off the light, go to bed, and leave the porch of heaven lit, all night, every night, by someone who has never once stopped watching the road.